But by the mid-20th century, American palates changed. Lighter cakes and pies replaced heavy puddings, and few homes had time for multi-day preparation. Though still cherished in Britain, plum pudding faded from most US tables by the 1950s. By the early 20th century, ambrosia salad had become a Southern Christmas favorite, sweet, creamy, and deceptively simple. Named after the food of the gods, this dish combined fresh orange segments, shredded coconut, and sometimes pineapple or marshmallows. Served in crystal bowls, its brightness stood out among heavy meats and gravies. Each family guarded their recipe. Some added whipped cream, others used sour cream or mayonnaise. The key was freshness and careful layering, often assembled just before the meal to keep fruit crisp. It represented abundance, warmth, and the tropics brought to winter tables. But by the 1970s, ambrosia's reputation suffered from too many shortcuts. Canned fruit cocktails and store-bought whipped toppings dulled its flavor. The once luxurious dessert turned into a cliché of church potlucks and outdated cookbooks. Still, for many Southerners, ambrosia salad remains a taste of childhood Christmas, even if only in memory. Before refrigeration, brawn or head cheese was a vital part of Christmas preservation traditions. Despite its name, it contained no cheese, only meat from a pig's head, simmered until tender, then pressed into a gelatinous loaf. Every part of the animal was used, nothing wasted. Cooks would remove bones, shred the meat, and mix it with its natural broth rich in collagen. When cooled, it solidified into a savory terrine, sliced cold and served with mustard or pickles. It was prized for its rich flavor and symbolism of thrift and respect for the harvest. In rural communities, the Christmas hog killing marked the year's culmination. Every cut had its place: sausage, ham, lard, and the head for brawn. This dish connected families to cycles of work, preservation, and gratitude. However, by the mid-20th century, factory meat processing and refrigeration ended such traditions. To modern sensibilities, head cheese seemed too rustic or unappealing, and it quietly disappeared from Christmas menus. You've sung about it in "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." But few today have ever tasted figgy pudding. This rich, dark dessert was once as essential to Christmas as the tree itself. Made from dried figs, sweat, breadcrumbs, molasses, and spices, it resembled plum pudding but carried a distinct fruity depth. It was steamed or boiled for hours, resulting in a dense, moist cake that could last for weeks. Families poured brandy over it and reheated it on Christmas Day, often with hard sauce or custard. Its origins date back to medieval England, where puddings were hearty boiled mixtures meant to sustain through winter. Over time, they evolved from meat-based concoctions to sweet celebrations of abundance and preservation. Figgy pudding's strong, spicy aroma once filled households with anticipation of the holiday meal. By the mid-20th century, however, the tradition faded. Few modern cooks had the patience for steaming, and boxed cakes or refrigerated desserts took over. Still, the song endures, a musical echo of a dessert long vanished from our tables. Once upon a time, mince pies contained actual minced meat, not just the sweet filling we know today. In the Middle Ages, they combined shredded beef or mutton with dried fruits, sweet and exotic spices like cloves, nutmeg, and cinnamon. These ingredients symbolized the gifts of the Magi, making the pie deeply tied to Christmas symbolism. By the Victorian era, meat gradually disappeared, replaced by rich fruit and brandy mixtures. Tiny, oval-shaped mince pies represented the manger, and many households baked 12, one for each day of Christmas. The smell of baking mince pies once defined December kitchens, but tastes changed. Heavy spiced fillings fell out of favor, with Americans seeking lighter desserts. Today they survive mainly in the UK, while the US moved on to pumpkin and pecan pies. Still, for centuries, mince pie was the flavor of Christmas, both sacred and sweet. From figgy pudding to spiced peaches, these dishes remind us that food once connected generations through patience and care. In rediscovering them, we don't just taste history, we keep it alive. So this season, mix a little nostalgia into your feast and remember, the most meaningful flavors are the ones that time forgot. What if I told you Christmas dinner once included pudding made from beef, peaches preserved in vinegar, and desserts set in copper molds? These are nativity fairy tales. They are real dishes that once defined the American holiday feast. Let's open the cookbook of history and rediscover the forgotten Christmas recipes of the past century. Long before turkey became the holiday centerpiece, roast goose reigned supreme on American Christmas tables. This rich, flavorful bird was the star of colonial celebrations and remained popular well into the early 1900s. Families would save all year to afford a plump goose, often raising their own or purchasing from local farmers. The preparation was an art form. The bird required careful basting and pricking to render the abundant fat, which was saved for cooking throughout winter. That rendered goose fat was liquid gold in the kitchen, prized for roasting potatoes and vegetables. The meat itself offered a deeper, more complex flavor than turkey, with crispy skin that crackled under the carving knife. German and Eastern European immigrants especially cherished this tradition. By the 1920s, turkey's lower cost and milder flavor began displacing goose. Today, finding a Christmas goose requires special ordering, and few Americans know the joy of this traditional feast. Christmas Eve meant oyster stew in countless American homes, especially along the coasts. This creamy, simple dish combined fresh oysters with milk or cream, butter, and just a touch of seasoning. The tradition dates back to Irish Catholic immigrants who needed a meat-free meal for Christmas Eve fasting. Families would gather around steaming bowls, floating oyster crackers on top, while church bells rang in the distance. In the Chesapeake Bay region, every family had their secret. Some added celery, others a dash of Worcestershire. The best versions used oysters so fresh they were still briny from the sea. Children learned to love that first taste of the ocean mingled with warm cream. By the 1960s, concerns about pollution and the decline of oyster beds made fresh oysters harder to find and more expensive. Canned versions couldn't capture the magic. Now this Christmas Eve comfort food survives mainly in memory, and a few traditional households along the eastern seaboard. Today, mince meat pie contains no meat at all, but the original version told a different story. Traditional mince pies combined beef or mutton with suet, dried fruits, spices and brandy, in a mixture that aged for weeks. This wasn't dessert. It was a way to preserve meat through winter. Colonial housewives would prepare huge batches in November, packing the mixture into crocks and feeding it brandy weekly. The savory sweet blend created complex flavors that improved with age. Each family guarded their recipe, adjusting the balance of meat, fruit and spices. Some added apple, others preferred more citrus peel. The pies themselves were often small, individual-sized treats called Christmas pies. Puritans once tried to ban them as too indulgent. The meat gradually disappeared from recipes during the early 1900s as refrigeration made preservation unnecessary. By 1950, most commercial mincemeat was entirely fruit-based. That original meat pie represented resourcefulness and tradition we've completely lost. This humble dessert sustained New England families through centuries of cold Christmas seasons. Made from cornmeal, molasses, milk, and warming spices, Indian pudding baked slowly for hours until it transformed into creamy comfort. The name came from colonists calling corn Indian meal, and the dish merged Native American ingredients with English pudding techniques. Every household had their version. Some added raisins, others preferred it plain. The key was patience, letting it bake low and slow until the edges caramelized and the center stayed silky. Served warm with heavy cream or hard sauce, it provided both dessert and sustenance during harsh winters. Church suppers always featured at least one pan, the spiced aroma filling fellowship halls. Indian pudding remained a Christmas staple through the 1940s, especially in rural New England. But as convenience foods arrived and tastes shifted toward lighter desserts, this colonial comfort food faded. Today, only historic restaurants and dedicated home cooks keep this piece of American culinary heritage alive. Southern Christmas tables once showcased harmony pudding as proudly as any turkey or ham. This creamy dish transformed simple hominy grits into holiday magic, with eggs, butter, and milk. Some cooks added cheese, others kept it sweet with sugar and vanilla. The texture was key, somewhere between custard and soufflé, with tiny corn kernels providing substance. It bridged the gap between side dish and dessert, equally at home beside roast meats or topped with preserves. The preparation required careful attention. slowly cooking the grits until perfectly smooth before folding in beaten eggs. Cast-iron skillets produced the best crust, golden and slightly crispy against the creamy interior. This dish represented Southern resourcefulness, elevating humble ingredients into celebration food. African-American cooks especially perfected harmony pudding, passing down techniques through generations. By the 1960s, instant foods and changing tastes pushed this labor-intensive dish aside. Modern Southern Christmas meals rarely feature this once essential comfort food that connected families to their agricultural roots. Elegant Victorian Christmas dinners weren't complete without blancmange, that shimmering molded dessert that graced the finest tables. This delicate creation combined milk or cream with sugar and gelatin or cornstarch, often flavored with almonds or rosewater. The pure white color gave it its French name, meaning white food. Proper ladies prided themselves on perfect blancmange, turned out from elaborate copper molds into shapes of flowers, castles, or Christmas trees. The texture had to be just right, firm enough to hold its shape, but trembling slightly when served. Some versions layered different flavors or colors for dramatic effect. Garnishes included candied violets, fresh berries, or gold leaf for the wealthy. Making blancmange required skill and patience, constantly stirring to prevent lumps, while achieving that signature smoothness. It represented refinement and European sophistication in American dining rooms. The rise of instant puddings and jello in the 1920s made elaborate molded desserts seem old-fashioned. This once prestigious dessert disappeared except from period dramas and historical cookbooks. Victorian and Edwardian Christmas celebrations featured glistening jars of spiced peaches, their amber syrup fragrant with cloves and cinnamon. These weren't mere canned fruits, but carefully preserved treasures made when peaches were perfect in late summer. Housewives would select only the finest fruit, briefly blanching to remove skins while keeping them whole. The poaching syrup combined vinegar, sugar, and warming spices, each family adjusting proportions to their taste. Some added brandy, others preferred pure fruit essence. The peaches simmered gently until just tender, absorbing the spiced liquid while maintaining their shape. Packed into glass jars, they aged until Christmas, developing deeper flavors. These jewel-like preserves accompanied roasted meats, their sweet-tart spiciness cutting through rich gravies. They also appeared in crystal dishes as a palate cleanser between courses. The process required skill. Too much heat and peaches turned mushy, too little, and they wouldn't keep. Modern canning methods and year-round fruit availability made such careful preservation seem unnecessary. And this Christmas tradition largely vanished by the 1960s. No forgotten Christmas dish carries as much nostalgia as plum pudding, the crowning glory of the Victorian holiday feast. Ironically, this dense dessert contained no plums. In the 17th century, plum referred to any dried fruit, especially raisins. Traditional plum pudding was a masterpiece of patience. Sweet breadcrumbs, flour, eggs, sugar, and dried fruits were mixed with brandy and dark stout. The batter was steamed for hours, sometimes up to 8, in a cloth or basin until rich and dark. Families often prepared it weeks before Christmas so the flavors could mature. The pudding was doused in more brandy, stored in a cool pantry, and steamed again before serving. Then came the grand presentation, doused in liquor and set aflame at the table, blue flames flickering as everyone cheered. A sprig of holly topped it off, symbolizing the crown of thorns from Christian tradition. Each family member was supposed to stir the pudding east to west in honor of the 3 wise men. Small charms baked inside promised luck, a coin for wealth, a thimble for thrift, a ring for love.